Alright, hey everybody. For our decimal unit, we typically start off using manipulatives. So up here I'm showing it up on the smart board, but I'll show you what the kids are using at their desks. We use these as the 1, our flats, we call them in our classroom. These would be our tenths, we call these longs. And just in my classroom, just to differentiate between the flat and the cube, I call these the cubes, and sometimes we call them the baby cubes, just to make sure that everybody really understands there's a difference. They like saying baby cubes. So we start off talking about the 1, and your decimals are all going to be based off of what is the 1. So for flat, we say, here's the 1. As a decimal, we'd write it like this. And I talk to the kids a lot about money. I say, when you're at the grocery store, they might hand you $1 back. They're not going to say, here's your $1.00 back. So we talk about how all whole numbers throughout your life have always had invisible decimals. We just don't tell you about them when you're younger because we don't want to confuse you. But a whole number always has decimals. We just don't say the 0 cents because we just assume you understand it's $1.00. So that's why we do that. So for our longs, we have a tenth. So our tenth as a decimal looks like that. We also talk about, we want to learn to say tenth instead of 0.1. We call it speaking decimal because that's going to help us later on when we're converting between decimals and fractions. So if I learn to say tenth, 1/10, I can really easily convert that back and forth between decimal and fraction. And then the baby cubes, we talk about that 1/100th. We talk about how that's like a penny. A penny is 1/100th of a dollar. And once again, it makes it easier to convert back and forth between fractions. So that's where we start off. We start off with these 3. And I've told them we're under the understanding that these go a lot further back. There's 10,000ths, there's millionths. But for the purpose of what we're learning to start off, we start with tenths, hundredths, and we'll eventually work into thousands. So what we'll do at the desk is, I may pull over some of these. And say, kids, I want you to put that on your desk, and then we're going to learn how to build it as a decimal, and then learn how to speak it as a decimal. So since we have 3 things here, what we'll do in the classroom is, we'll make a space for our flats, we'll make a space for our longs, and we'll make a space for our baby cubes. And then, it's just about filling in the blanks right now. So we look up here. Do we have any flats? No. Do we have any longs? Yes, we have 2 longs. So we'll put 2 there. Do we have any baby cubes? Yeah, we've got 1. So we've just built the decimal. Now it's learning how to speak the decimal. So what we do is, if it's a 0 out front, we don't say that. I don't say at the grocery store, here's $0.21 back. I would just say, here's 21 cents. If there's an actual number out there, yes, we have to speak that. So here, we would say, just what we see here, we see 21, and then the kids always get confused on if they say 21 tenths or 21 hundredths. So what I tell the kids is, we say 21, and then we always pronounce the column that we end in. So since we're ending in the hundredths column, we're going to say 21 hundredths. So it's 21 hundredths. Let's look at a different example. If I pull over a flat, and I pull over, let's say, a long, we'll do the same thing, and this helps us to generate some more conversation about what this actually looks like. So we're going to make our space for our flat, our space for our long, and our space for our baby cube. And we go, okay, we've got 1 flat, we've got 1 long, and do we have any baby cubes? No. And this will help us generate conversation. Right now, we're going to put a 0 down. You should just use that as a placeholder. And I always joke with them, sometimes we put the 0 because it just makes us more cuddly and ready to go. We feel safe that we filled it in. So what we do is, we learn how to speak this by saying 1, and we get to the decimal, and the kids like to say point, and I say, no, that is illegal in the classroom anymore. We are not allowed to say point. Okay, we're learning to speak decimal. So whenever we have to pronounce the number out in front, when we get to the decimal, we say and. So this would be 1 and 10, and once again we're ending in the hundredths column. 1 and 10 hundredths. And I talk to them about that and say, remember before when we talked about being able to turn a decimal into a fraction? Well, this is what we call a mixed number, because we've got a number out in front of the decimal, and we've got numbers behind. We're mixing them together. And this is going to help when we get the fractions, because it's going to look like this. 1 and 10 hundredths. So that helps us to get started, and we play many games with these to give us a foundation for where we're going to be going into the future when it comes to comparing decimals, ordering decimals, and adding decimals. But that's where we start. So at home, if you're working on this with your kids, you don't necessarily have to have base 10 blocks to be able to do this. What you can do, and what we do on homework, is we'll just draw them. On a dry erase board, a piece of paper, you can just draw that for your student, and draw that and say, okay, what does this look like as a decimal? And right away they can practice going, okay, I've got 1 flat, I've got 3 longs, and I've got 2 baby cubes. So they learn how to build it, and then you say, okay, let's see if we can speak this. Well, this is going to be 1 and 32 hundredths, because it ends in the hundredths column. And there's your foundation for working with decimals.